This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Grateful to have you here on an episode of Real Talk where we'll tackle a couple of stories in front of us. One of them has been in the news. As a matter of fact, we'll hit three. Canada just reaching a deal with China just a short time, hours before we're doing this show. We'll get into that a little bit. Canadian ag producers are, I don't know if they're going to love it, but they're probably going to be happy that, Canadian canola and Canadian peas are going to find their way back into China in a way that will benefit Canadian producers. Now, the trade-off here on canola, peas, and a couple of other items, a couple of other, important items to the Canadian economy is that Chinese EVs, a limited number of Chinese EVs will now have access to the Canadian market, assuming that they can pass the Canadian safety standards. I'm already seeing some objections from Real Talkers, by the way, folks writing in saying Chinese EVs can't handle Canadian winters. This doesn't make any sense. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford doesn't believe that it makes any sense either and says that this is really going to hurt Ontario's auto manufacturers. And, Canadians involved in or impacted by CUSMA negotiations, our trade agreement with the United States and Mexico for that matter, but with the United States are saying, you don't go out and shake hands and make a deal with China when you're trying to negotiate with the United States. The deal with the United States, the trade with the United States is far more significant and far more important. You can let us know what you think about this. We'll hit it in more fulsome fashion with more details on our next episode of the show. That'll be with Supriya Dwivedi, who joins us the first episode of every week. That'll be the 19th of January. You'll have time to send us your thoughts in an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Our Real Talk Roundtable today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, brings in three transit experts from across the country. We're going to talk about transit safety. We'll talk about transit use. Every time we talk about public transit on this show, regardless of context, we hear a couple recurring themes. And one of them is that a number of you just don't feel safe, and that's why you don't use transit. But we also hear from a whole bunch of you that feel like transit is very important. A fulsome and well-functioning transit system and network is very important to a well-functioning city. You use it, or you would use it. You'd like to use it. You'd like your kids, your family, your loved ones to use it, if only you could have more confidence or feel more safe. Of course, there's some of you that use transit all the time and probably have never had an incident where you felt unsettled, or at least like your personal safety or well-being is at risk. I know the audience will come at this conversation from a number of different perspectives. That's the beauty of this audience. That's the beauty of conversations like this. And in just about 10 minutes time, we'll check in with Denis Agar out of Vancouver from an organization, Movement, Metro Vancouver Transit Riders. David Witte is going to join us from the Edmonton Transit Riders, and David Cooper, an expert on this that consults with cities across North America on transit design, on fixing transit issues. David with Leading Mobility Consulting. That's coming up about 10 minutes into the show. But we're going to lead off today with some classroom audio. This is not necessarily being covered, at least not yet, by the mainstream media, so to speak. You're not hearing about this on the big newscasts. It's not splashed across the front page or the home page of the big papers and the big outlets, but it's a story that Alberta's premier has chimed in on after an independent media producer released audio that's been leaked from a Catholic high school in Fort Saskatchewan, just northeast of Edmonton. It's a limited snippet. It's about a minute's worth of audio taken, and it captures a teacher. Real Talk has confirmed the audio to be legitimate, and we've been in touch with someone close to the teacher, and the teacher, for obvious and understandable reasons, has, at least at this point, declined an interview request. But we're going to put the audio in front of you, and I want to pick your brain on this. Conservatives, generally speaking, not every single one of you, but conservatives aren't happy about this, and that includes Alberta's UCP Premier Danielle Smith. It feels like the kind of story that a talk show like this is cut out to cover. It feels like something important to talk about. What is the role of teachers in classrooms? And what is the role of conversations in specific classes, like social studies, for example? in helping young learners, young adults, better understand the world around them, better understand the politics of the world around them, and better understand their place in all of it. How do you decide the right political party for you? How do you decide to make an informed vote? How do you decide to sift through political promises and political positions and decide what would be the best fit for your political support? We're going to play the audio. You can make your own decisions. I'm going to read you some of the responses to a tweet that I posted about 12 hours ago before we started doing this show, and we're going to jump into the Real Talk live chat as well. That one powered by Park Power, of course, and we'll keep this conversation going through the show. We'll tee it up. We'll hear the audio. We'll get to some of your initial responses. We'll make our way through that transit roundtable, and then we'll revisit this story before we get to the flamethrower. It is chock full today, particularly on the heels of our conversation about defunding private schools in the province of Alberta. Many of you with a lot to say on that. We've heard from representatives speaking in favor, an organization called ASCA, speaking in favor of the independent and private schools in the province. And we've heard from the organizer of a petition, heard from her in our most recent episode, Alicia Taylor. She's a Calgary high school teacher, and she's the one that's trying to get about 178,000 signatures to trigger a referendum asking the Alberta government to adopt the Ontario model, which is to say that private and independent schools are options for families, but they receive zero public funding. That's the general theme of the flamethrower, but not just limited to that subject, as you know, if you've been a regular tuner of the show. To the leaked classroom audio in just a second. First, we want to let you know this episode of Real Talk happens with the support of RapidX Financial. The crypto world moves fast, but your trust in an exchange cannot be a gamble. That's why we're proud to partner with RapidX Financial, a made-in-Alberta solution backed by the same experts behind those Rapid Cash ATMs that you've seen across Canada for a quarter century now. RapidX makes it easy to get started with 3 different ways to trade. They've got their physical crypto ATMs. They've got an over-the-counter desk for discrete and larger value trades, also for folks that could just use a little human help. And then, of course, they've got their secure online platform. We're showing it to you now at rapidxfinancial.com. Because you're a Real Talker, hearing about this on this show, there's a special offer for you when you go to rapidxfinancial.com and use the promo code Ryan50, Ryan50, all one word. They'll take 50% off fees on all of your online Interac e-transfer trades. RapidX Financial is secure. It's FinTrack registered. That's a big deal. And it's non-custodial, which means that you always control your keys. Those that know Bitcoin, those that know crypto, know that that's exactly what you're looking for, and that's what you'll find at rapidxfinancial.com. Don't forget the promo code Ryan50. So there are things that we know and things that we don't know about this story out of Fort Saskatchewan at St. Andre Bessette Catholic School. We do know that audio was captured and then somehow acquired by a conservative content creator, by a right-wing content creator in the province of Alberta, and leaked, released. The audio, we don't know the context around it, what was said before or after, but we know that it's a teacher speaking to his students about politics in Alberta. Now, a lot of folks are absolutely outraged by this. Others are reserving judgment. Some see no problem at all with it. I'm curious to know where you'll land on it. Let's get to it. It's about a minute long. Here's the audio released out of St. Andre Bessette Catholic School in Fort Saskatchewan.
I'm like, okay, but you can't. Your entire society is built on fuck. Trudeau, sticker, oil pipelines, now you bad, I'm good. Angry. Okay, but you can't control your entire society with anger. Me not angry if me rich. Okay, cool, so we're going to give you jobs. Oh, okay, what kind of jobs? I know, what kind of jobs do you want? Oil jobs! Now! Okay, that's Fort McMurray. Now, if you're like, but I think maybe Fort McMurray should think about solar panels. Ah! They blow up. Okay, ironically, I did drive my electric cars from Fort Mac once. I got a couple compliments. I'm like, okay, there you go. And then I didn't park outside. I was scared to get hit by truck. But the idea is, they're like They are conservative. And you walk up there and you're like, I think you guys should consider other possibilities of political parties. And they're like, but there is no other political parties. But yeah, there's the NDP and the Green Party and the Liberals. And they're like, but you could maybe like, they just don't. I grew up in Bonnyville. All right, like literally Bonnyville. My mother, just for jokes, my mother's kind of a little hipster lady, put an NDP sign, a federal NDP sign, in her yard in Bonnyville. Her sign, she timed it.
All right, and then the audio trails off from there. So you've got a high school teacher obviously speaking very candidly to his students. And I'm going to watch right now. I'm keeping an eye on our live chat to see how this is landing with people that are just hearing this for the very first time. You've got a high school teacher obviously speaking very candidly to his students, referencing the Fuck Trudeau bumper stickers. This was described when it was released by this content creator as a profanity-laced tirade against conservatives. I'm not sure that fits. But it's definitely not flattering to conservatives, is it? Like, we can all agree on that. But this guy's shooting from the hip, right? You can hear a smattering of laughter in the classroom, but for the most part, and we just have audio, we don't have video, for the most part, the class is just listening. There's not huge response, which I'm sure teachers will tell us, this isn't stand-up comedy, and you're not going to have the class rolling over with laughter for 45 or 60 straight minutes every time. But this is obviously a scenario, at least my understanding of it, where the teacher feels very comfortable. The teacher sharing his thoughts on the dynamic of Alberta politics, and in particular about the oil and gas industry, right? He talks about the Trudeau bumper sticker and references it. That's the only profanity in the piece, by the way. Talks about anger and oil and riches and jobs and wealth. Makes a comment about solar panels or the potential for solar in Fort McMurray and the pushback on that. Mentions EVs, which you know will be a trigger to a lot of people, and how he didn't feel comfortable necessarily driving an EV or at least parking it and leaving it overnight in one of the central communities when it comes to Canada's energy sector. Talks about the decision to vote conservative and wondering aloud whether there might be a political party that could be a better fit for somebody. And then he names three of them, the NDP, the Greens, the Liberals, and then talks about growing up in Bonnyville. For those of you that don't know, Bonnyville is a wonderful and relatively small community, great tight-knit community. Obviously, Bonnyville is home to many people that do work in the oil and gas industry, that work in the energy industry. Talked about growing up there and how his mom would, I don't know if the idea was to trigger the neighbors or to poke fun, or if his mom was sincerely putting up big NDP election signs, but we don't know where his anecdote or his story goes from there because the audio trails off. So there's been a response on a couple of fronts from official channels, and one of them is from Scott Walker, who's the principal at this school in Fort Saskatchewan at St. Andre Bessette Catholic School. And in a message to staff, which was leaked and posted by this same content creator, the principal says it has come to our attention that a recording snippet and out-of-context content of one of our classes has been shared online and will likely be the subject of social media influencers' podcasts this evening. And he was right about that. So the principal had the heads up that this had been leaked and it was coming out. The principal says our school name has been used as well. Our school and school division are aware and have engaged the necessary steps and staff at this point. This email is for your awareness at this point. Says the principal, should you come across any of this online through any avenues, please do not engage with it. If any students and parents ask for information from you, please simply direct them to me. That from the principal of St. Andre Bessette. So it's shared by this conservative content creator, but then it's reshared by the Premier of Alberta. And that's where it gets on my radar, and that's where it gets on thousands of people's radar. when Premier Danielle Smith tweets, "I am deeply disappointed by what is heard in this recording. Teachers have a duty to remain professional and politically neutral in the classroom. Students are there to learn math, language, science, and critical thinking based on the approved curriculum, not to be subjected to profanity, partisan attacks, or insults toward Alberta's ethical energy workers and their families. Our classrooms must be places of respect where every student and every family feels welcome, regardless of their political views or where they work." That from the Premier of Alberta. So this is now a story the minute that the Premier shares it. And this is where I become curious on where Real Talkers will land on this. And so I posted, the only profanity here is a single reference to those bumper stickers, the "Fuck Trudeau" bumper stickers. I say we're all of a sudden clutching pearls on those. Come on now. I say I'd be interested to hear the full version of this teacher's comments on political diversity in Alberta. Now, some of you will roll your eyes at this, but it's reasonable to suggest it's possible that this teacher may have done his character of the Alberta NDP voter as well, right? He perhaps did a parody of Green voters as well. Perhaps he touched on different communities. Perhaps he was role-playing, in a sense, voters from different parts of the province or different parts of the country. At no point did I hear the teacher specifically proselytizing for political parties that would oppose conservatives or suggest that people that are voting conservative, if it makes sense for them, are making the wrong move. We can also acknowledge that this is not a good situation for the teacher. Can we all agree on that? I mean, I'd love to be able to ask that teacher where his head's at right now. Number one, starting with one of your own students, we assume that it was a student that recorded this and shared it. I mean, number one, starting with that. Now, I do a lot of public speaking. I speak in a lot of rooms. I shared with you just a few episodes ago that I was honored to deliver a keynote just within the last week or so to all of Edmonton's high school principals. And what did I tell you when I was sharing about that experience? That I didn't have any photos to show, that I wouldn't be posting about it publicly, and that I really wasn't going to talk to you about the content of that conversation because the conversation unfolded in trust. We were exploring different ideas. There were people with different beliefs in that room, different convictions, serving different student populations. And so we decided, in order to be able to have a free and meaningful conversation, that we'd keep our phones away and we wouldn't post about it. So number one, I bet you that teacher probably suspects who it was that released the audio, and I would imagine feels stabbed in the back to a certain degree. I also imagine parents of these students, in particular conservative voting parents, are pretty pissed off about this whole thing, right? There's that narrative that teachers are trying to groom socialists, that teachers are trying to train the conservatism out of the next generation of voters. And honestly, if you look at it through that lens, this audio is a real problem, right? And then when the Premier of Alberta chimes in on this and shares that content from that conservative content creator, when the Premier shares that classroom audio, well, then it pours gasoline on this thing and really advances it to a whole other level. Christine in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I agree. It's not a good look for the teacher. I'd love to hear how he's feeling about this today, and I wish I could hear the full content. Christine, I would love to hear the 10 minutes before and the 10 minutes after. I'd love to hear some of the participation of students in the room. Some of you have been tweeting at me and saying we should be recording and posting all the content from all classrooms so parents can have a better idea of what's being said and what's being taught. Gorma quotes Albert Camus, says, quote, it's the job of thinking people not to be on the side of the executioners. Cherie says the people that are pissed off about this are the same ones driving around with those exact Fuck Trudeau bumper stickers, or at the very least supporting them. She says there's incredible irony here. Chantel says, I feel really bad for the teacher. The UCP has a strict no phone policy in classrooms. That is true, by the way. I mean, it feels like the tiniest little detail here, but I understand your point, Chantel. Says that teenagers should be reprimanded. This is going to cause the teacher undue headache, and for what? I mean, that's one perspective on it. I do feel like it is going to cause the teacher a real issue. I do feel like for this teacher, there's been a betrayal of trust in the classroom, and obviously now they probably feel, just as I feel on this show or in any other speaking engagement, when something you're delivering as part of a bigger context or a bigger thought is cut down to a snippet and shared, and you feel, and I'm not saying this is the case, I'm saying this is a possibility, you feel as though it's out of context and misrepresents the bigger theme or the general theme of what you were talking about, that's a tough thing to grapple with. And then, of course, you've got the bigger picture conversation about the role of teachers in classrooms, the role of the curriculum, and exactly what that purpose is. You know, for the premier to say that students are there to learn math, language, science, and critical thinking based on approved curriculum, it sounds to me like this teacher is addressing young adults, I don't know specifically what grade it was, and bringing them up to speed on what critical thinking looks like, right? Now, some of you are saying, listen, if the script was flipped here, and if this was a teacher that was going off on the NDP, then you can just imagine the left would be losing its minds, right? Dr. Fiona Matatal, a physician out of Calgary, responded to my tweet and said 2 words, Tanya Furr. You know, Minister Tanya Furr that was caught on that audio just a couple of months ago. What was it, Johnny, specifically she said? She was calling back people, I think, that had called her constituency office. I think that was the context. But she was calling voters. She was calling Albertans.
These motherfuckers.
Yeah, right? Isn't that what she said?
Oh, yeah.
She was like, okay, and thank you, and this is Minister Furr returning your call. I think she was leaving a message, and she basically said, thank you for your engagement, thank you for whatever, you know, happy to hear your call, whatever. Then she hangs up, and then she says, let's get to the next motherfucker, or something like that, didn't she? Like, it was actually hilarious. But probably not hilarious if you're a government minister, right?
Again, that was something I heard where, like, you know, I like to see, like, everything's not black and white. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe, like, she just had to deal with something pretty stressful before that, or that was coming up. Maybe, I have no idea. Maybe that was like her 1,000th call of the day. It doesn't disregard or make what she said, you know, right. But, like, there was no context, and that's the same thing with this audio. I wish this was like an hour-long recording so we could hear the whole class.
Hear the whole class.
Like, what grade is this? How long did he talk about this for? In what context? Was there a test afterwards on which bumper stickers are right and wrong? Like, I have no idea. But again, I mean, it doesn't sound great.
It doesn't come across as a really good look for the teacher.
No, but the only profanity in there was talking about the stickers.
And that's the thing.
It's pretty, like, for the premier to make a thing of this, I was like, this is pretty weak. You know, it's pretty mid.
Bunny Slippers says if both sides of the argument were laid out on the table in front of students, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. It's called teaching the students to analyze the situation. CV says, anybody else find it, like, unprofessional and disturbing that our premier shared this scandal based off what this content creator posted?
Agree.
Ben says, to be honest, what's the big deal, you guys? It's a 1-minute clip. It's like somebody said earlier, it was Cliff in our live chat. It sounds satirical. Like, it sounds like a teacher making a point. Was the conversation having both sides represented?
100%. I mean, what's the news flash here? That teachers are left-leaning? Like, I'm sure you could record audio from churches or other places that would sound just as kind of make you cringe if you were on the left side. So,
Man,
yeah.
I grew up. I told you guys, I've shared this with you many, many times. Going to a private religious school, all the way up to high school. My entire upbringing was conservative teachers. Yeah. Like, I've been around it. I've seen the other side. Travis in our live chat says, context, you guys, says this is at most a 90-second clip. That teacher spends months at a time building rapport with those students who would have understood the context of the lesson. Mm-hmm. That's my big thing here. Now, the reason I bring up the profanity and the fuck Trudeau bumper stickers, I don't think that that's the central theme here. No. I don't think that's the context. No. This content creator does a very effective job by describing it as a profanity-laced tirade against conservatives to get people to click on it, and it obviously inspired the premier, and the premier talks about how she doesn't believe there should be profanity in the classroom. The hilarious part about this is, in particular, the content creator that secured this leaked audio and shared it, I guarantee, I don't know him personally, but I guarantee has absolutely zero problem with fuck Trudeau bumper stickers. I don't know if he has one himself, but I guarantee he's got no problem with them. And if you check out his channel, most of his content is around Alberta separation.
Yeah.
He's very pro Alberta separation.
Sure.
He believes that Mark Carney is an issue based on his connection to the World Economic Forum. I mean, it's really hardcore kind of right-wing stuff. He's really dug his heels in there. You know where he stands on this. Yeah. But I think Travis makes a really important point about the rapport that these students have with their teacher. You assume that that's a mandate, or at least it's a top priority for any teacher. And once you get that ability, we don't know the dynamic in that classroom, but once you have the ability to speak freely and speak candidly, speak with some humor, and talk to students like adults or like soon-to-be adults, then that's probably a good thing, right? It's probably a good thing to get there. Christie says maybe it was balanced. We don't know. It's a short clip. Ambustion says this is manufactured outrage. Says, I know that I'll be hearing how he was holding an NDP rally in the classroom once they start spinning out the story. RS500 says this comes across as a think for yourself and don't fit into a box because of pressure type messaging. And that's how I took it as well. Now, I'll read some of the tweets that are aimed at me in more of flamethrower fashion. There's a lot of triggered conservatives by this, and I'm not saying that to be facetious or to be a prick myself. I do understand, like, if you're a partisan conservative, and if you do believe that teachers are all left-leaning and trying to convert students to vote for the NDP or to vote for the federal Liberals, then you will see this as evidence,
sure,
without a doubt.
But also, like, there's more context behind this because, you know, the teachers and the premier have not been getting along. So, I mean, I'm surprised that, again, that's why I'm saying I feel like this is kind of weak. This is mid. Like, with everything that's happened, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to hear worse than this from teachers, you know? But
Leslie says he was literally being politically neutral by saying, hey, be sure to look into all the political parties, not just conservatives. Jill says you can't teach critical thinking in teaching politics without speaking about different perspectives. How do we know that he wasn't politically neutral? He even called his mom a hippie. That from Jill, which is true.
He did.
KK says critical thinking would mean you notice the left social studies out of the statement. Explorer Hollis, what's up, Hollis? Thanks for your YouTube channel membership. Says Smith is manufacturing outrage. It's nuts, given how much violence and vitriol we hear from supporters, that she won't even address that as an issue. This has been an issue for a long time. Keep the comments coming in. We're going to get to more of this. I know that Real Talkers will have a lot to say about it, but we don't want to keep our Real Talk roundtable waiting on this. Let's get right to it. Across Canada, the fact is that safety on public transit has become a key concern for riders, operators, and, of course, for elected officials. National data on transit-specific crime is limited, but broader trends show that there's an increase in public attention to violent and nonviolent incidents involving riders and transit workers. In our home city of Edmonton, statistics over recent years show fluctuating patterns in transit crime. Police calls for violent incidents at Edmonton Transit vehicles or centers rose sharply, more than 50% year over year in the early 2020s, with assaults, weapons possession, robbery, and aggravated assaults identified as key offense types. Now, recent police data in Edmonton shows that violent crime in transit centers is down by more than 20% year over year, but disorder calls and absolute calls for service do remain elevated when stacked up against pre-pandemic levels. In Calgary, official surveys are showing mixed perceptions. A lot of riders say that they feel safer on transit during the day, but there's still a significant share that are avoiding transit due to overall safety concerns. Across Canada's major cities, transit safety discussions are focusing not just on policing and enforcement, but on social disorder, homelessness, substance use, mental health support, design of transit environments, and community linkages. Now, of course, the goal here is to have a safe and well-used transit system that benefits riders, that benefits the city writ large, where we see return on the significant investment that's made in public transit in cities across the country and beyond. We're thrilled to welcome Daniel Witte to the program with Edmonton Transit Riders, Denis Agar with Movement, Metro Vancouver Transit Riders, and David Cooper from Leading Mobility Consulting. David, I saw you just a few days ago featured in a fantastic and in-depth CBC report on what the CBC describes as one of the most dangerous transit systems in Canada. It happens to be our hometown of Edmonton, so it especially caught our attention. How big of an issue is this transit safety across the country?
So Edmonton's my hometown too, and definitely grew up taking transit in the city. So my perspective of this is I worked with the transit agencies on creating a series of recommendations to address transit safety from a customer safety perspective, staff safety, mental health, substance use, and homelessness. And what we're seeing in Edmonton is no different than what we've seen across the country. We've seen a lot of more challenges when it comes to social complexities. We've seen a lot more challenges when it comes to disorder. We were one of the very few places that were open during the pandemic in terms of a public space. And when we look at the challenges when it comes to disorder, it's very similar to what you'd see at the street level. It's very similar to what we see in parks and libraries. And we've had these intersecting crises from affordability, opioid, mental health, just kind of day-to-day living. And what's happening in our communities reflects on our transit system. I think one of the things that was interesting from that national report is that we've seen some improvements the last couple of years from sustainment of different efforts, from additional staffing, from additional program support, from both outreach and enforcement. But this is something that we can't stop working on. And one of the things that has been a challenge is also the data. CBC did a lot of work over a series of months in terms of consolidating the data, and we actually haven't done that at a national level before. But there's a lot of context and a lot of nuance to that. And I think this piece speaks to that. But also they do recognize there has been some improvements, but there's a lot of work left to do, not just in Edmonton, but just across the whole country on this file.
Denis, in your understanding, are violent incidents on transit increasing as a proportion of total ridership, or are perceptions, do you think, driving the narrative more so than actual objective harm?
It's perceptions in my sense. Like, the truth is that transit ridership is increasing, right? Like, these trains and buses are full any city you go to across Canada. So these riders, are not putting themselves in harm's way every day. They're making the right choice for themselves to get around. And we've also got to put this into context that transit is somewhere between like 6 and 40 times safer than driving. Like, not percent safer, like 6 to 40 times safer. So it's like a huge multiple. Like, if you are trying to avoid getting hurt or dying, like, stop driving.
Daniel, you're here speaking on behalf of the group Edmonton Transit Riders, and so this is obviously something that is like right in front of you on your desk, so to speak. This is obviously an issue I would imagine that your advocacy centers around, and we'll talk bigger picture, guys, by the way. This doesn't have to be all about violent incidents on transit. We want to talk about increasing user numbers. We want to talk about increasing efficiencies. But Daniel, what's your mandate? What's the mandate of the group Edmonton Transit Riders?
Yeah, we focus as a group on basically everything that has to do with transit. A lot of focus on that portability, on making sure buses are fast and reliable, and a lot of that is on the comfort of Edmontonians who use transit. So I think you mentioned infrastructure design, things like that. That's something we focus a lot on, especially when it comes to places maybe that don't make people feel as safe. So even though, yes, safety is improving, it's a bit creepy sometimes standing on an LRT platform late at night by yourself, especially when you can't see other people. So things like infrastructure design, specifically at places like Coliseum Station, is something that we are really focusing on in terms of how do we make this a more pleasant place to be and make sure that those perceptions of safety catch up with the reality that we are seeing a safer system year over year.
It's worth noting that in this CBC report on the national, and folks can check it out on YouTube. We'll actually link to it in the show notes. It specifically references Coliseum and Stadium LRT stops as the ones where a lot of this is going down. Now, of course, we want to take a look at best practices and look across the country, around the world, and what's been working best. David, you've worked in many different and worked with and for many different municipalities on really fine-tuning their transit systems. Is there a city or a region or a model that has really delivered returns here that's really working well? And if so, what are they doing?
So we've seen different models in different places, and it's really based on the context of the issue and the situations you're dealing with. When I look at Edmonton is one of the very first outreach program partnerships that we ever saw on public transit. And what the city did was deliberately recognize, like, not all these are criminal matters. These people need support. And how do we find those pathways to different places to get people access to housing, get people access to the public health care system, get people access to mental health supports. That was pretty significant both in Edmonton and Calgary. They had some of the first programs for that. But there's been different programs for different things to manage this. I don't think anyone has actually solved this challenge. I think one of the things that we need to do is to look at where do we get the support from the province and the federal government? We need support on mental health. We need support on getting more housing. We need more support on dealing with prolific offenders who victimize individuals on the public transit systems. And this is not unique to Edmonton and Calgary. It's something from across the country. We've had different program responses, and we're starting to see some returns on this. The numbers have gone down both in Edmonton and Calgary, but we need to sustain these efforts. But no one solved this. Like, we're managing this. And one of the things, to speak to Stadium Station for a second, the city did a lot of work in redesigning that station, and the calls for service at Stadium is actually down 50% since before. If you go to the old stadium, you have to go downstairs to an underground passageway into the station. Now it's completely reopened up, and that's helped out with particular safety pieces, but that was significant investment in that specific context. It's one tool of many. How do you design the spaces? But I think that our bigger issue is no one has solved this. We're managing this, and we're starting to see some returns on investment, but we need to sustain these efforts, not just at the city level, but with our partners.
Let's be fair. A 50% reduction in crime, or at least in police calls, is major.
It's massive.
Denis,
absolutely massive. But it was also a massive investment of infrastructure at that station, right? And that's not something we can do at all stops and stations, but it was something that has been pretty significant in the Edmonton context.
Denis, Vancouver's got the third highest level of transit usage in Canada or the United States. Everybody, I think, would guess correctly. Number one is New York. Number two is Montreal. So two Canadian cities in the top three. Vancouver, number three. You understand the system well. You use the system, obviously. How did Vancouver get to that point?
I think there were two really crucial decisions that happened actually further back, kind of in the 70s. One was not running any freeways into the downtown core. And that's something that Edmonton and Calgary both have in common. You know, there are freeways leading up to it, but they don't go through, they don't slice through the community in that way. And so that makes transit faster by comparison because driving can be slower. The other decision that TransLink made, or I guess its predecessor, was to run a fast, frequent rapid transit system. So SkyTrain is totally separated from the road. There's no grade crossings, and it's automated. So you can run the trains as close together as like 2 minutes, 90 seconds, I think, is the highest frequency. So people are never waiting for a train. The train's never waiting at a red light. And so the combination of kind of slow driving into the downtown core and really fast transit into the downtown core has yielded a lot of benefits, right? You know, when you get a lot of people to ride transit, you end up with less congestion. You end up with way higher affordability. We find that when you look at the cost of driving and housing, you combine the two. Some of the neighborhoods that you wouldn't expect are actually the most affordable in Metro Vancouver because you're not spending 10 grand, 15 grand on the cost of owning a car, the gas, the insurance, everything. So yeah, those are some of the benefits of those choices that were made earlier on here.
Denis, I want to ask you just a follow-up question. Then I'm going to come to Daniel and David as well with the same one. We're talking to you from the historic Mercer warehouse in downtown Edmonton. There's a transit stop, but a few blocks away, there's a ton of construction traffic right now as Edmonton is ambitiously expanding its transit network. And I know a lot of advocates will say that it's not even yet close to where it needs to be for a city of 1 million and a city with eyes on a population of 2 million. But do you think that Edmonton, a mostly suburban Alberta city, a city that's often described as a car city or a driver's city, can Edmonton get to that level?
Absolutely. We've already seen a lot of progress that Edmonton's making, right? They're making all the right choices. They're putting more housing close to transit, and they're putting more transit close to housing. That's really, what it comes down to. And like making it fast, making it competitive. The Valley Line to the West Edmonton Mall is going to be wild. This BRT that's proposed is going to be incredible. And then all this new housing that's close to trains is good. You can look at a place like Brampton, Ontario, that frankly is doing almost none of that stuff. Like, it's a suburb of Toronto. There's it's just really spread out, wide roads, single family homes, big yards, that kind of thing. Brampton has blown past a lot of other Canadian cities on transit. What did they do differently? They ran the buses frequently. That's really all they did differently. They just put more buses on the road, and so people didn't have to wait as long for them. And so with all the stuff that Edmonton's doing, plus increasing that frequency, I think you guys are gonna. I always see Edmonton as like most improved Canadian city, and they're gonna be that way for like 10 or 15 years, and they're just gonna rock past us. I
Hey,
think.
thanks.
Yeah, we like hearing that.
I like that.
Yeah, are you saying Edmonton is the most improved Canadian city, or can be the most improved? We'll get to his comment there in just a second. It looks like we may have lost him, so he'll pop back, and Johnny will get that figured out here. I want to come to Daniel and David on that same question here. Daniel, I'll remind our audience you're here representing Edmonton Transit Riders in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I do recognize the irony of a transit roundtable presented by a car dealership. We'll acknowledge that and move on. Maybe some of the staff at Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West are taking transit to work. You never know. But Daniel, do you share that same optimism? Like, I'm curious, in the context of your advocacy, if you can shine some light on the work that your group does to influence policy and to connect with the decision makers. Do you think Edmonton can level up, can scale up? I know a lot of real transit enthusiasts feel that the system's just not where it needs to be right now.
No, we definitely don't think it's quite where we don't think it's quite where it needs to be. That doesn't mean we don't acknowledge that there's been so much work and honestly so much funding put in over the past 10 years into making our system better. There's been a lot of positive improvements, but the thing is that's come after decades of underinvestment in our system where we haven't bought new buses, we haven't expanded LRT. There's still parts of our city that won't have LRT access or won't have mass transit access for decades to come. So it's great that we're seeing these improvements, but we do really need to say that, hey, we're not there yet, and we need to consistently work over years to come to make sure we get there. Some of the things that we really want to see, Dennis mentioned, is the bus rapid transit plan implemented. This is going to speed up buses, give people more reliable wait times, and connect parts of our city that right now don't have good mass transit into that network. And we also are really interested in making sure our buses come frequently. We don't have as many buses or as much service as a lot of major Canadian cities that do see higher ridership, like Toronto with their 10-minute network. So getting to that level is something that's really important. Just, a regular bus for actually making sure people get on transit and can rely on that system.
David, we've referenced your work with Leading Mobility Consulting. I'll let the audience know that you've also held senior planning roles when it comes to transit infrastructure and the bigger picture transit plans for both Vancouver and Calgary. And you've also been featured in a documentary on YouTube separate from the CBC report. I'm just showing it now. The documentary, people can search and watch it on their own. It's called On the Front Line, Keeping Transit Safe. I'm curious to know what cities who have seen dramatic upticks or increases in transit usage attribute that to. Is it a change in perception around the safety of transit? Is it the convenience of transit? Is it expansion of the networks, the bus lines, the trains? Like, is it all of the above?
I think I'm going to trickle down on a couple of things, but when I worked in Calgary, we had a lot of Dodge Ram truck ads on our C-Train cars, and appreciate the commercial support from a funding perspective on that. So I kind of wanted to add that one in there. I think the way I look at it is like I grew up in Edmonton, and I grew up in Edmonton when we had a very different transit system. I grew up in Edmonton where the joke was we had the biggest mobile museum in the country when it came to our transit fleet. We didn't have a lot of frequent service on the system. The LRT was stuck at University Station in the tunnel, and there was a 15-year debate about, do we actually go south to Century Park? So one of the things to build off of what Dennis has said and Daniel is that the investment in frequency is huge. Edmonton is actually one of the very few cities that has fully recovered their transit ridership since the pandemic. We haven't had that same story. Brampton had that story because they have supply chain logistics workers that go to Pearson and helped keep our economy moving at a national level. Banff had it because, good luck finding parking in Banff. South of Fraser and TransLink service area, so like the Surrey and Langley has had that because of significant population growth in Metro Vancouver. But we've not had the same story across the country. We haven't seen full ridership recovery in Toronto or Ottawa or Montreal or some of our prairie cities. So, and the big thing on that has been frequency. You have frequent routes across the city. We're building a significant LRT expansion, which, I go to Churchill Station now. There's 3 lines there. Like that's big city stuff. We never had that growing up. So when you provide people the opportunity to access transit, they're going to take it. And one of the things that is also big on the safety piece of this is the biggest thing to combat transit safety is the level of service. If it's high, it's attractive, it attracts people. Crime is based on opportunity. If you reduce the opportunity of crime by actually making transit a very viable and attractive service, you start also getting the reduction in those numbers. So that there's a whole bunch of multipliers on that. And Edmonton actually has been quite the success story on this for the last number of years, especially where it was in the past.
Dennis, we have you back. I'm so glad you're back. Welcome back to the roundtable. Dennis, briefly dropped. You can hear me clearly and okay?
I can. I'm so sorry about that, guys.
Don't sweat it, buddy. We're grateful that you returned. I want to ask you about the politics of all this. It feels these days like everything's political, and not everything needs to be political. I'm sure that all three of you have paid close attention, or at least have a working understanding or knowledge around the Green Line project down in Calgary. And there's really been an interesting development as the province has essentially taken the project away from the city, and we'll see what happens with a new mayor and what that relationship might look like. But you get a lot of people, if you read the comments, you got a lot of people asserting that essentially transit is serving the left-wingers and conservatives aren't using transit. And I know, generally speaking, that's absolutely not true. But are you concerned that this is framed as a left-right issue? Or do you see this, for that matter, as a left versus right issue?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't serve us when this stuff is like, transit is for lefties and cars are for right, Tories, whatever. Like, that's the wrong way to look at it, because the evidence shows otherwise, right? Like the premier in Canada that is investing the most in transit is Doug Ford. And I say this as a person living in an NDP province. Like, I'm very sad to say that, but he's building this hugely expensive Ontario line, something that advocates have called for decades. He called it the Ontario line, which is, by the way, kind of fun, but I guess we did it first by calling ours the Canada line. But that said, if you look south of the border, there are most of their transit funding happens by referendum. So people vote for an increase in sales taxes or something like that to pay for transit. And around 80 to 90% of those referendums actually succeed. And they don't just succeed in California and New York. They succeed in North Dakota. They had a successful transit referendum in South Carolina. And sometimes these things are raising billions and billions of dollars to build either bus rapid transit or light rail or, heavy rail transit. So I think that that shows, regardless of where you are, regardless of your political persuasion, you understand that you don't want traffic to be as bad. You don't want people to be forced to drive everywhere. Like, grandma shouldn't have to own a car past like deep into her 80s to get around. She should have options.
Okay, I want to ask all three of you this in closing. We sure appreciate your time. David, we'll start with you. If we look ahead, I don't know, let's say 5 years, what would success look like in the context of transit safety and transit ridership in Canadian cities? And what would be a critical intervention that would be most needed now to get there 5 years down the line?
I'll answer the safety thing, but I want to talk about Green Line for a second,
Yeah.
if I could.
Oh,
after.
please.
I've been riding that line emotionally for a decade and been in the orbit of that. So,
well, I mean, that's been so you've worked on it, right?
I've worked on previous LRT projects, so planning, commissioning other lines in Calgary, and definitely have been in the orbit of that. I think maybe I'll start there. The province getting more involved in rapid transit planning is actually quite typical the bigger you get. So the BC government is very involved when we look at SkyTrain extensions. Dennis brought up Doug Ford is building the biggest transit expansion program in all of North America. We're looking at significant transit builds out in Quebec that have been opening through the REM project. One thing I remind people from a history lesson is the left and the right like transit. The question is always, how do you build it?
Right.
And that's one of the very unique things that we've had on this. When we look at history of federal funding, it was actually the Harper government that turned on the taps for transit capital. We had almost no transit capital from the feds during the tail end of the Maroney era, during Chrétien, during Martin. Valley Line Edmonton happened because of Harper. The Green Line became a project because of Harper. So when they were looking at ways to invest infrastructure dollars, and then the Trudeau government then amplified that through additional funding, and we're also looking at continuing through the Carney government. So this left and right thing is, I think, a distraction. How we have individuals that are involved in transit sometimes is actually a good thing, because if the funder is not interested, they're not going to fund it. So I think that's kind of where my head's at. We're going to get a green line. They're building it. It's under construction. Obviously, there's going to be some context pieces that we have to work out from through the downtown segment, but we had a groundbreaking last year and it's under construction. So I take that as a success. In terms of safety, there's a number of things that we definitely need. We need more access to housing. We need public health infrastructure when it comes to harm reduction. People are going into our transit stations, consuming drugs because it's a safe place for them to be from their own individual personal perspective. I've heard that from people themselves. I've heard that from community service agencies. That's what's happening. I've heard that from the police. So unless we start dealing with some of the public health harm reduction type infrastructure, and obviously the recovery infrastructure on that, that's going to be an ongoing thing. We need support in mental health. Right now, the only way you get mental health support is if you do a mental health apprehension, if you're at risk yourself or others, and then you're back on the street in less than 24 hours. We need to find ways to actually provide support on that. We need to sustain our efforts. Right now, the province provided 50 police officers to support transit safety in Edmonton and a similar program in Calgary. That's a time-limited program. It's not permanent. We need support for building out our outreach program so we have access to 24/7 services, and that's something 24/7 services. That's something that comes from the province. There's a lot of work to do, and happy to have those conversations with especially the province on this, because if we don't keep sustaining these efforts, we're going to fall backwards on this, because this issue is not going away. It's getting better, but we need to sustain our efforts on it.
Daniel, what's your vision, in particular in Alberta's capital city, in Edmonton, 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I'm going to copy David and talk a little bit about the province for a second, where I think provincial involvement is going to happen. They seem interested in it. And one of the biggest ways they do that right now is through the province's low-income transit pass. This provides, subsidized passes for people who meet different income requirements. And with the provincial budget coming up, it's something that we're really looking at in terms of advocacy. It helps so many people, tens of thousands of people in Edmonton, and I think hundreds of thousands of people in Calgary access transit, get to their jobs, get to education, get to their community. And it's something that is part of a long-term sustainable public transit system. Looking 5 years ahead in Edmonton, I think what we really need to be doing is looking to make sure that our system is reliable. Edmontonians want a system that they can depend upon. And right now, our 5 busiest bus routes, which each see almost like some of them 15,000 people use them every single day, some of them 10, but I think over 50,000 people use these 5 busiest bus routes. And almost 1/3 of all trips are showing up late. So that erodes people's confidence in our system. It makes them more likely to choose other options. And it is really something that we'd like to see change and speed up, making these buses more reliable over the coming years.
Yeah, this is like, if you look at like the reputation that and I'm probably, guys, I'm only a civilian. I'm not an expert. But if you look at some of the transit systems around the world, I can think of like in Japan, and I think of London for sure. And everybody talks about the Swiss, although I think that's more like inter-country and cross-continental train travel. It's probably a whole different thing, right? Everybody's nodding for the benefit of those listening on the podcast. But it's always about how you can set your watch by the trains, right? And that's understandable for people that are going to use it. Dennis, let me ask you this in closing. I want to thank you all for your time. We've kept you longer than we asked you for, and I want to respect that. Dennis, you're about to, I'm assuming you're boarding a plane. You're on your way to Edmonton this weekend for an in-person event. I know that this is going to be super cool. Before we tell people where they can check that out, where they can meet you in person, I want you to answer that same question for us. 5 years from now, what's your vision across the country, and what does it take to get there starting like today?
I'm going to go on a little different angle, because I think, Daniel and David really covered it well. And I'm going to say that in 5 years across the country, I want a network of transit rider groups that is not only all volunteer like ETR currently is, Edmonton Transit Riders, but a network of transit rider groups that has paid staff, that is like kind of on the level of like the Chamber of Commerce, because the truth is there are so many transit riders in cities across Canada, and in a lot of ways they're not represented. They're not like this big intimidating constituency like chambers of commerce might be, and we can be, I think, right? Like we can help drive the agenda. We can communicate to politicians like, hey, we're big, and if you don't do the things we want, like we're going to vote for someone else. And so I really want to see the power in the hands of the riders, and I think it's really exciting what Daniel and the team there at ETR are doing.
Okay, tell us about what's coming up, this movement event. People can check out michaeljans.ca, Edmonton City Councilor, who's hosting this. It's an AMA event, an Ask Me Anything event. What's the purpose of it? What can people expect?
Well, it's exactly along those lines. I'm coming to town. I'll be there on Monday. We started a group just like that a couple of years ago. We were able to fundraise. Now we have a staff of 5. And it feels like we're on this like escalator towards really playing that role. We have municipal elections coming up this year. We had a big funding crunch last year where we were really loud and really like trying to shape the agenda. And so on Monday, I'm going to come and just regale you with some war stories from all that happening, and talk about how ETR, has already achieved some of this stuff, but how, they can grow their funding and they can kind of play that big role in Edmonton's political discussion.
Okay, cool. People can check out again, michaeljans.ca to register. We'll link to it in the show notes. Guys, I got an email here to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Just arrived. Brinley's listening from Calgary and has a quick question. This can be a yes, no. I know you guys got to go. Brinley's wondering if any of the three of you think it's a good idea. And I think by the way that she's phrased it, she doesn't think it's a good idea, but I might be reading too much into it. Do any of these three think that it's a good idea to pursue a high-speed rail line between Calgary and Edmonton? It would qualify in a way as public transit, right? David, you look intrigued.
Absolutely. Like we're one of the fastest growing transportation corridors and Highway 2. The province is looking at this. It keeps coming up over and over and over again. As a person who has family in Edmonton and goes to Calgary all the time. Like when we look at the economic development opportunities, we look at the transportation opportunities, we look at road safety opportunities, like, let's go. Like, that's just like, we're doing studies and looking at this thing. We're going to talk about it until it's built.
Yeah. To the other two of you, a quick word on it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it is a great project. I think referencing, the reality we're living in right now. I drive sometimes out on the roads in Edmonton. I don't think a lot of the people who are driving really have other options or should be out there in these conditions. And especially on the QE2, I think every winter we get 2 or 3 stories of these massive pileups that are happening, and investing in public transit that doesn't have to be on the freeway can present a really big safety improvement for the people who maybe have to get to Calgary, but feel they have no other option but to drive right now and are putting themselves and everyone else around them at some level of risk, especially in the winter. So trying to minimize that is, I think, one of the biggest benefits of this project.
Last word to you, Dennis. Good idea?
Yeah, good idea. It's such a no-brainer corridor. It's so flat. It's so straight. It's so much cheaper than a lot of the other high-speed rail corridors out there. And in the meantime, I want to see the province of Alberta investing in good intercity bus service that's comfortable, that's clean, and that's frequent. So you can get not just to Calgary, but to Red Deer and to Lethbridge and to Fort Mac quickly, reliably.
Guys, this has been enlightening and elucidating, as they say. Or is it elucidating? I shouldn't use words I don't know how to pronounce. But we really appreciate your perspectives on this and your availability. We've been hearing from Daniel Witte with Edmonton Transit Riders, Denis Agar from Movement, Metro Vancouver Transit Riders, and David Cooper from Leading Mobility Consulting. Have a great weekend, guys, and thanks for doing this. You bet. Our feature interview there presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Curious to know where Real Talkers land on this. I want to hop in the live chat for just a quick second. I want to pick your brain. Johnny, here's some context. The estimated cost for a high-speed rail line between Calgary and Edmonton, and I know we're going to get Simpsons monorail references through our live chat here, but it has been discussed. It's actually been costed out. This is through what they're calling the Prairie Link project. So that's Ellis Don, which is obviously a huge and reputable construction company, and AECOM, which is I host the Consulting Engineers Gala, the Showcase Awards every single year. AECOM is always in the mix they're an award-winning engineering firm. They've priced that out at around $9 billion, and they would be looking at a 2040 completion. So this would be something, if it were to all come together, ready in the next decade and a half. Yeah. I might not even still be here, knock on wood. I will say this. That was a little dark. Not knowing what the cost would be to use it, but assuming that the cost was, relatively speaking, affordable, if it cost less than driving your car, etc., I would absolutely use a high-speed rail line between Calgary and Edmonton. I would probably use it minimum of a couple times a month. Oh my God. And how wonderful would it be? And guys, I'm honest. Like, I'm never going to bullshit you on the show. Like, I don't ride transit. Like, I don't. And I'm not wearing that as a badge of honor. I'm just telling you in my daily practice, I pretty much drive or walk everywhere. I use those like scooters to get around downtown in the summers, but other than that, I walk or I drive. If it were convenient to go from my front door to catch wouldn't that be great to walk to a bus stop, to catch a bus to a train station, and then to catch like your LRT, like your municipal transit, your city's transit system that would feed toward, you have to assume that it would make sense, obviously, to connect the municipal transits, that LRT, that light rail transit, to the high-speed rail. If you could go bus, LRT, high-speed rail, and then I could, in theory, use Calgary's public transit to get to my parents' house or to wherever I'm going, I would use it all the time.
Yeah, that's a lot of leapfrogging, too. I wouldn't even mind if there was like a huge station near the airport.
Or just even Uber to the airport. Sure.
Park your car and go to Calgary. Because that's the thing. Driving to Calgary isn't a pain, but it's straight. It's, foot, unless you've got, a newer vehicle, which I don't, which cruise control really is awesome. Your foot gets tired. You got to stop for gas. You got to stop and do this. You got to stop and go to the bathroom. Man, getting on a train, even if I had to drive to like an airport, that kind of area, park my car, go down to I'd be in Calgary. I'd be there every other weekend. It'd be great to see more of this province. I think the main thing is, the cost of gas, the time it takes, getting everyone, like you with a family, getting everyone in the vehicle, and packing up the car, blah, blah, blah. If you could pack one bag and put everyone on a bus, go down there for one night, stay in a hotel, whatever, come back. Or I could even see myself, depending on when this run, going down in the morning and then coming back late in the evening.
Right?
It'd be amazing.
They say these trains would run at 400 kilometers an hour. Like, obviously, there'd be some stops along the way. It wouldn't just be a straight shot. Red Deer for sure. Shout out Red Deer.
That'd be like
did you see
everybody, get a snack and get off for a second and,
No, we don't want that. I like the sense of urgency. I like in Europe. I remember this, guys, I'm old as hell. Like, I remember when I was traveling with my Eurail pass with my good buddy Ryan after our first year of college in England.
Ryan Squared. Our Christian rap group, R2LJ. Shout out to R2LJ with our hit single, God Ain't Nobody's Fool. But yeah, me and Ryan traveling Europe on that Eurail pass, and man, just some of the greatest memories you could ever make. Yeah, man, you don't like when that train is leaving, and you are on it. But there's something about train travel that's super cool. It's really nice.
I know there's a lot more people that would rather travel by train across the country. Now,
100%.
People will write in and say you guys are apples and oranges. Of course, now I'm talking like via rail and CNs and passenger rail across the country. Different ballgame entirely.
These are things Japan, Europe has figured out. It's a nicer experience than a bus
relatively
to a bus.
affordable.
Yeah.
It's convenient. Yeah. Totally. I mean, but we've looked into train travel across Canada, and it's like, someone correct me if you want, if you're able, correct me if you have more experience on this. All I know is from pricing it out, I've never actually paid for it, but like we wanted to take a train out to the mountains, or we want to take a train out to Vancouver. I know our 10-year-old would love that. Our 3-year-old would be eyes wide, just loving it. But it's like it's very expensive to do it. It's almost cost prohibitive to do it. If you could make it more affordable for people and invest, then people would do it. What's so funny?
It just, I agree with you totally. And that was a long time ago, but when I got out of high school, I was an avid snowboarder. I took a bus literally from Ontario, small town Ontario outside the GTA, all the way to Fernie, BC. And I did the same thing. I was like, I wish there was just a train, but I had to go bus to train, or train to here to bus to, I had to keep skipping. I'm laughing because someone said, wait. Ryan was in a Christian rap group?
Yeah. Yes. And you know what?
Dubious wants to have you on his show.
Oh, Dubious.
He does a hip hop show
Dubious
on YouTube.
is like, might as well be like our hip hop correspondent here on the show, I think. Oh yeah, guys. I mean, back in the day, this was a bit.
He's the boss in the sky, and he's
I remember one specific line. Now, this was the lyrics were penned in grade 8 and delivered at a talent show and youth group in grade 9.
Fire, turn it up.
I don't remember the whole song. But like I told you guys, I grew up in a faith-based private school. Yeah. So I remember one of the lines that was like a real banger was drinking, drugs, and premarital sex. Oh, no. These things will kill you like a prehistoric Rex. Effective.
I'm scared straight.
And like there was no drinking, drugs, nor premarital sex from anybody in that audience.
Oh, wow.
I really didn't think I'd be referencing R2LJ on the show today, but that's why Real Talkers tune in, I think, because we're off script. We're never on script, as a matter of fact. But in all seriousness, let us know what you think about this to talk at RyanJesperson.com.
I'd love to hear some unsolicited audio of those.
You know what? And we
love to hear those tapes.
We had like a few full songs, and we like recorded music videos in our basement, and it was really. We had the Roland D20 synthesizer, which was like a bit of a big deal for 14-year-olds to have at the time. Remember that Roland D20 for any of you creators? Hollis says, you know what would make transit more safe, guys, is more people. If you're never in an area that's not crowded, you're less likely to perceive these dangers. It's a perception issue more than anything.
I agree.
Emily G says, I felt safe riding transit downtown like 25 years ago. She says, but I was also oblivious to dangers. Understandable as well. Tony says, I love how they've revamped Stadium Station. I haven't seen it, Tony, but that's the one for reference for people outside of Edmonton. That's right by Commonwealth Stadium. And there's those two. Stadium and Coliseum Station have been kind of the violence and the incidents and the criminal activity has not been limited to those two stations, but those are the ones where it's most prevalent.
I mean, it's everywhere. It's in every major city. And also, I like that comment because, I just flashed. Never mind. I agree. Like, I lived in Vancouver, and there was way more people taking transit. But if you think of Vancouver, like, there's way more organized gang violence there. There's way more, like, you know what I mean? But it felt safer because you get on the SkyTrain, and, like, it's packed every time you get on. You get on the SkyTrain late at night after business is closed because people are going home from work. I saw someone just comment now. It's kind of weird in Edmonton how, like, business is closed, and then you can't take a bus home. They've already stopped running. It's strange, right? So I think the more people that take it, the more people that use it. I mean, there's safety in numbers, definitely.
I should have followed up with more from Tony, where she says the South LRT in Edmonton needs to extend to the international airport.
100%.
She says it's shameful a city like Edmonton doesn't have that. Tony, 100%. I can think of a million adjectives. Shameful is one of them.
I mean,
preposterous, ridiculous, short-sighted.
I mean, it just started going in Mill Woods and Chappelle and all these areas. Like, it's
but like in
that's
Vancouver,
wild. That's wild.
And I know people roll their eyes when you go in Vancouver, but that Canada line,
it's amazing,
which was obviously built with. And I don't know the exact cost on just the Canada line. Let me see what it was. But like that was built with infrastructure expenses related to hosting the Olympic Games. Yeah. So, of course, that's something that has to be considered. But
just the way it crisscrosses, like you go from the airport, you go right downtown, you could go to Granville, you go to Kitsilano. Like it's great how you can get everywhere.
Oh, man. And I was out there hosting an event at the Vancouver Convention Center. When was it? That would have been back in May or June. And I'd never used the Canada line before. I hopped in. Guys, look at me. I had my big boy pants on and everything. I was carrying my own bag, John, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if I can use public transit to get me all the way downtown to my hotel. Monorail. And so I worked up the courage, and I looked into it. And long story short, it was like $7, I think. And it dropped, the stop was like 2 blocks from my hotel. I walked into the hotel. I was like, what the hell just happened? $7 to go from the airport all the way to my down, like right on the waterfront, right by Harbor
Love
Center.
it.
Fantastic. Now, for context, the original Canada Line in Vancouver cost nearly $2.1 billion.
Yeah.
Although it was built as a P3 for about $1.9 billion. I mean, the fact of the matter is you got to invest in transit.
Sure.
No matter what.
And I get that we're not Vancouver, we're not Toronto, and we're definitely not Japan or Europe. But like, at the least, there should be a line from the airport to downtown. At the very least, there should be a straight shot right there, and then build off it. That's where the offshoots come, right?
Tracy D says, I'd be curious to know what other cold weather cities do regarding the tendency to have transit terminals used as shelters. And it's a very important question. It's a great and focused question. My guess is like these warming centers. I know that that's what they hear. I mean, adequate shelter space and adequate options are what people need, right? Guys, I'm not an expert. I'm a civilian. I just sort of have gut instinct takes. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. But I look at it and I say, like, you know, when people look at some of the biggest issues that influence their perception of safety, a lot of it is you know, the prevalence of the unhoused population. It's public drug use, things like public urination. And the answer, I think, to a lot of those is giving people options, right? Like if you have public washrooms or washrooms that are available for people, like human beings with inherent value, to use with dignity, then they're not going to be like pissing behind dumpsters all the time or pissing on the street. Right? If there's supervised consumption services and harm reduction options, then people aren't going to be like using drugs in that, you know, area right outside your business or outside the restaurant or the theater that you're visiting. If there's warming centers or community centers, friendship centers, oftentimes they're called, for people experiencing homelessness, then chances are when it's minus 20 or minus 30, they're going to utilize them and go there. But if the shelter space is limited or closed, or if people don't feel safe in these shelters, then they're not going to use them, right? Plain Power says they've been using transit for a few months now, says, I have not looked back. RS says transit is a lifeline for people who work lower wage jobs. How is that partisan?
Agree.
That is absolutely true, and it's such an important point. You know, I come at this from a point of real privilege, being like, well, I don't really use transit. I just drive or take scooters wherever I go. If you're on a fixed income or a lower income, you know, if you're a single parent or a senior or somebody that's trying to put new shoes or, you know, fill a lunchbox for 3 kids and it doesn't, it's not an option to have a vehicle or 2 vehicles, then this is something that's important to you.
Yeah, and even if you don't slot into that box right now, things can always change. Like our guest was talking about. Like as you get older and you retire, it's dangerous for you to drive. Boom, you're switching to transit. Maybe you get in an accident. Maybe you lose your job and you can't afford your car payments anymore. Yeah. Like there's all sorts of things where like just because you're not using it now does not mean you couldn't use it, you know, in the blink of an eye or definitely in the future when you get older. So
totally. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you were talking about just the system and your personal experiences. Dwayne says, I've seen a bus driver get spat on. They have very dangerous jobs. Honestly, I say this like with respect. Like you couldn't pay me enough to drive a city bus. Like I can't even imagine the amount of shit that those people deal with.
It's not like the glorified in the movies like da, 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 da. Hey,
that was like,
hey Jim, how you doing today?
Hey, Mr. Jones.
How's the kids?
Right? No, it's more like, yeah, and I shouldn't laugh. I don't want to roll in laughing about it. I mean, I think of, what was that? Tom Bragg. Was it Tom Bragg? I want to remember that guy's name because he deserves the respect. But he was, Tom Bragg. This was a story that we covered back in 2011. This was just an absolutely horrific story when a man by the name of Gary Mattson, and I'll reference reporting here by the CBC. This was on July 25th of 2011. So this is, almost 15 years ago. What's happening? I can't believe this was almost 15 years ago. But Gary Mattson basically gets on the bus, and if I remember the story correctly, the bus driver was insisting on payment. I think that's what the story was. And anyway, Gary Mattson, who's was since declared a dangerous offender, which means that he'll remain in prison until it's determined he's no longer a risk to the public. We should look into that. I should look into that, see if he's been released. But Gary Mattson, and it's not alleged, everybody saw the video. It's horrific video. Basically starts punching Mr. Bragg, this bus driver, in the head multiple times as he's behind the wheel of the bus, then drags him off the bus, and the beating continues. And Tom Bragg, if I remember the story correctly, I believe lost vision in one of his eyes. Left him, I'll reference this report here, punched him in the face, pulled him off the bus. This is hard to hear, guys. I apologize. Stomped on his face 15 times. Can you imagine? It put him in intensive care for 2 weeks, left him with brain injuries, blind in one eye. And Tom Bragg did not return to work, as far as I know, at least referencing this report from July of 2011. So shout out to bus drivers and transit drivers.
Sure. But another reason I think, for the most part, like public transit, we should try to figure out a way to make it, if not 100% free. Like those instances, like bus drivers should not be, like if somebody walks on and doesn't pay, just let them, like don't deal with it. They're not enforcement agents, right? They're
I totally
drivers,
agree with you.
Like,
and I would imagine there was probably, and I'm talking out of my ass here, but there was probably, I would imagine, a policy shift there.
100%.
Where it's like,
I mean, we're talking about like what, $1.50 or something?
Well,
$2?
it's not the driver's job.
No.
To deal with, in this case, Gary Mattson was heavily intoxicated, obviously a violent individual. But I mean, you look at Zoran Mamdani, and what was one of his big promises in New York City? Free transit, right?
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, well, it's funny what happens when
free
Wi-Fi. All of a sudden you take office.
You get Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You're getting Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Wait, how much is it going to cost? Wait, what? I'll get to more of your comments on this, but I want to return back to where we kicked off, and that's this leaked classroom audio, because we had our roundtable ready to rock in our virtual green room here, and we really didn't give you the floor, Real Talkers, in the same way that we really like to do it.
If me no rich was my favorite.
We'll play the audio again, because I know
it's hard to be really mad at this, because I get like. I'm trying to put myself in.
Hang tight. Let me get this out of the way, and then we'll go there, because I want to get your take on this.
I just wanted to say that was my favorite life. Me no happy if me no rich. I was like, okay, so you're comparing them to Kate. This is not a good look.
It's not a good look.
No, it's
we
not.
can all agree.
It's insulting. I get it.
It's not a good look for the teacher. It's not a good look for the school. It's not a good look for teachers across the board.
But at the same time, if a comedian was doing this, I laughed a little when I heard that. So,
and I think the comment earlier about the rapport that the teacher had built, I think it was Travis that said that, is a valid one. Listen, guys, back to the conversation in a second. But first, an acknowledgement that this episode is happening with the support of our friends at Friesen Brothers, proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned in 16 different Alberta communities. I see they've got their pork and apple sausage back. Their Ivan sausages are absolutely incredible. They're made in-house. Nobody else is doing that. Plus, seriously good sandwiches made simple and more. Mark your calendar for the 1st of February. That's your next chance to save 15% the first day of every month from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on a minimum $75 purchase. That's Friesen Brothers. You can learn more about it. What's this, a caramelized onion and brie pizza? What? I just saw that on their website right now. Again, that's Friesen.com. Our friends at Solar by Kubi. I wasn't sure if I should drag them into this conversation about the leaked classroom audio, but the Kubi story started with 2 Fort McMurray oil and gas journeyman electricians going into the solar business because they saw a huge opportunity there. So Fort McMurray deserves a little credit when it comes to solar panels up there. It's an amazing story, a grassroots success story right here out of Alberta. Kubi now, of course, Western Canada's busiest solar installer. You can learn more about the process. Get a free solar quote anytime by visiting their website, kubi.ca. Get the engineering started now so they can be up on your roof as soon as the snow melts, and you can start keeping more money in your pocket with kubi.ca. North Road Investment Council, working with established and successful families, businesses, organizations, agencies that are looking to set themselves up well through unexpected challenges. A lot of them. A lot of these investors, more and more private clients, even institutions, are wondering if mutual funds are not keeping up with the benchmark, right? Like with the Canadian stock market returning about 32% last year, why wouldn't you just own the benchmark? At North Road Investment Council, they build customized passive portfolios that are designed to capture index returns, but they got a strong focus on tax management and matching your values and preferences. The team at North Road, if you're at an earlier stage of building your wealth, can also work with you on an hourly basis. You get a professional to review your current investment strategy, your insurance needs, and develop a customized financial plan. Plus, they've got digital risk advisory services. Nobody else is doing that. Learn more about what makes them different at northroadic.com. Our friends at Athabasca University reminding you it's always a good time to head back to school as Canada's Open University. They have hundreds of online courses and, of course, accredited online degrees designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. That's why they have more than 500,000, get that, 500,000 program and course alumni from more than 100 countries. Folks who have experienced the AU advantage, where your only commute is to your device. Check out the admissions process, learn about transfer credits, tuitions, fees, student supports on the website today. That's athabascau.ca.
We got a great poll going on our YouTube channel right now.
Does it have to do with my Christian rap career?
In regards to my financial sitch, and question 1, me no happy, me no rich. 10% of our listeners feel that way. Number 2, me no happy anyways, 22% of our listeners. Money no equal happy, 28% of our listeners. And the winner, me happy regardless, 40% of our Real Talk.
Me happy regardless. Real Talkers, this is why we love you. Let's tee this up. I see that the numbers have bumped up quite a bit on our live stream presented by California Closets since we first shared the audio. So here it is. It's under a minute and a half. I want to do it one more time. For those that are just joining, here's what we're talking about. A right-wing content creator in Alberta has secured leaked audio from a classroom. We have confirmed that the audio is legitimate and from that school. We've been in contact by proxy with the teacher who has declined an interview request, and I don't blame them. If I'm the teacher, it's not been a good 24 hours or so. This was audio leaked out of a classroom at St. Andre Bessette Catholic School in Fort Saskatchewan, talking about politics. Here it is.
I'm like, okay, but you can't. Your entire society is built on fuck. Trudeau, sticker, oil pipelines. Now you bad, I good, angry. Okay, but you can't control your entire society with anger. Me not angry if me rich. Okay, cool. So we're going to give you jobs. Oh, okay. What kind of jobs? I know. What kind of jobs do you want? Oil jobs. Now. Okay, that's old Fort McMurray. Now, if you're like, but I think maybe Fort McMurray should think about solar panels. Ah! They blow up. Okay, ironically, I did drive my electric car from Fort Mac once. I got a couple compliments. I'm like, okay, there you go. And then I didn't park outside because I was scared to get hit by a truck. But the idea is, they're like, they are conservative. And you walk up there and you're like, I think you guys should consider other possibilities of political parties. And they're like, but there is no other political parties. But yeah, there's the NDP and the Green Party and the Liberals. And they're like, but you could maybe like, but they just don't. I grew up in Bonnyville. All right, like literally Bonnyville. My mother, just for jokes, my mother's kind of a little hipster lady, put an NDP sign, a federal NDP sign, in her yard in Bonnyville. Her sign, she timed it.
All right, and then the story trails off.
Sorry, I misquoted. Yeah. Me not angry if me rich. That was. I need to get somebody said it in the chat already. I'm getting a T-shirt. Me not angry if me rich.
Which is true. Is that the?
I mean, yeah.
So
it is true.
But if you're an oil and gas worker,
I'm sad, but I'm not angry.
And a conservative in Fort McMurray, then this is going to hit home. Like this is going to feel like a punch in the face, and then you hear that a teacher is sharing it in class, and you hear just 60 seconds out of a whole class lesson, and you believe that this guy is behind a pulpit, or maybe you're led to believe that this guy's behind a pulpit trying to convince, and I don't know what grade it is, guys, it's high school, but grade 10, 11, or 12, trying to convince these students that maybe their parents are cavemen, that because they vote conservative, they're cavemen.
But I give kids nowadays more credit. They're way smarter than we were with the advantageous, with the internet and everything they're exposed to. Yeah. They're way more mature quicker than we are. If I had heard a teacher or a pastor or whatever being like, these damn liberals, riding their eco scooters, wearing their recycled plastic dresses. Like if I heard something like that, I'd laugh just the same as I laughed at this caveman voice.
Well, I
feel like people are taking it a bit too seriously, but I also see how people could be insulted. I'm not disregarding that.
For sure, especially if people are easily offended.
But I feel
and
like
easily insulted. The hilarious thing, the tagline for this podcaster, this guy that released this audio, his tagline is "Stay offended," and he's doing a very good job of that.
I feel like any comedian out there, Edmonton, can hit us up in our emails, talk@ryanjesperson.com. They feel like this is weak, this is mid, this is probably funny, but yeah, it is troubling because it's coming from an educator. I feel like. I need more context, though. I'm sure over the next few days and probably the weekend we'll get some more. But like I feel like this is more in jest than like straight up anger. I mean, he doesn't sound
joking,
super
right?
angry.
He's speaking like, to state the obvious, he's speaking very freely. He obviously feels very comfortable.
It's not.
Like, are you even allowed to say "fuck Trudeau" in a Catholic school? Are you allowed to say the word?
I was gonna say this isn't something where like his superior would be like, "Yeah, way to go." Like this is definitely problematic.
No, I don't think
But
if you're a
it's not
principal,
like-
you want your school being discussed.
It's not the worst thing to come out of
Chantel says conservatives should take this as a big nothing burger. Stop being so sensitive. He's teaching teenagers, and it's one snippet taken out of the conversation. Cheryl says the premier. And if you're just joining us, the premier shared this. She said that she's deeply concerned about it. Can you show us the tweet again? I want to reference specifically what Danielle Smith had to say about this. You can have a whole other debate on whether or not the teacher, the premier should have shared this, right? I mean, it serves her political purposes. It serves the narrative, right? It's incredible. It's served up on a silver platter to the premier. All these socialist teachers that the government's been going to war with, and the teachers strike, and the book bans, and the pronouns, and the girls in sport, right? Like the teachers and the provincial government are no bueno right now. So this is an amazing opportunity for Danielle Smith. But should she have shared this? In particular from the Source, which is a pro-separatism media outlet. Not a media outlet, it's a guy, it's a content creator. No disrespect to him, he can do whatever he wants. But should the premier be even sharing something from that account? I don't know. She says she's deeply disappointed, says teachers have a duty to remain professional and politically neutral. She's 100% right that we want our teachers to remain professional.
Yeah.
And when it comes to political neutrality, that's a bit of a gray area, it seems to me. I don't know if there's anything wrong. I don't think that you want to be counseling your students and teaching your students and trying to groom, this word groom, I can't stand the word, by the way, but trying to convince your students to vote a certain way. I don't think that's healthy. But to remain politically neutral, like people often say to this talk show, like, "Oh, you're biased. Oh, you partisan influence on the show. You're biased." Nobody promised a talk show to remain neutral. You know, one of the worst talk shows, neutral, unbiased talk shows.
They're super boring, and that's
They're
what I mean.
super boring.
Obviously, we want teachers to not be biased, but at the same time, if it was just straight down the middle all the time, like, where's the
Like, I don't want a teacher.
I don't like the look and feel and sound of this, but at the same time, like, are we really going to pretend like that never happens? Like that?
It's real life.
It happens. It happens.
Teachers are building relationships with students. They're talking about real life. In this case, in high school, they're treating them like adults. That's kind of part of the process.
I'm more concerned when I hear like leaders. I'm more concerned when I hear, the president of the United States or J.D. Vance or other people saying things that are absolutely ludicrous, crazy, hurtful, and then people being like, well, they're just speaking the truth. But then a teacher can't joke around for 30, 45
Well, and look
seconds.
at what the youth of today are exposed to, right? I mean, we talked about this the other day at an auto manufacturing plant. The president of the United States flipping the bird to an auto worker who criticized him, called him a pedophile protector, probably hit close to home for Donald Trump. And told him to fuck off. Like, that's the president of the United States.
And like, I'll say it again. I have more students. I know you're out there. I don't like, these are obviously, we don't know the exact grade. We know it's either 10, 11 or 12, right? So these are almost adults by that point. Like, especially these days. Like, I remember when I was 14, 15, 16, like the things I were thinking about, like I wasn't a chia pet. I wasn't some plowable little piece of Play-Doh where like my teacher said something and I went home and was like, this is correct. I was questioning everything at that time.
Yeah. Schneids, what a great handle. Schneids says, try being an environmentalist in Alberta Stan in the 1990s. Cheryl says the premier and or her party's leadership get easily disturbed. Like, how dare they? If only people would act the way we wanted, everything would be fine. Yeah. Tracy's not wrong. How about this from Tracy, who says, I used to tell my students that in-class language, and I do agree with this, Tracy, in-class language should be the same language that your grandparents used. She said that backfired on me immediately because most of my students' grandparents had real potty mouths. That's hilarious.
I'm telling you, you technology haters are going to hate when they figure out AI and make AI just, if you want standardized, professional, unbiased, straight down the middle, boring, straight to your dome teaching, AI can give it to you.
Well, we've got a lot of people.
And you can program it to do it. And then there you go. You've got a bunch of robots who, like, there's no spectrum, there's no creativity. It's just...
There's a comment here on my tweet about this yesterday. You can follow me on Twitter at Ryan Jesperson if you don't already. Although it seems like more and more Real Talkers are closing their Twitter accounts. Or someone asserts that basically AI and robots are going to take over teaching anyway, so this problem's about to be solved.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's an improvement. Metamodern says, if I was mired in multiple scandals, I'd clutch my pearls at just about anything to distract Albertans as well. That from Metamodern. And by the way, we saw your $5 in the super chat on the heels of my brief rap performance. Thank you for the deep cut love. I appreciate that, Metamodern. Nia says the GOA government has removed critical thinking from the curriculum, so a teacher trying to get students to develop their own point of view is a good thing. Christy says, okay, the teacher can post an apology and we can move on. 80s Fanify says sarcastically, turn in your teachers, your coworkers, your neighbors for thought crimes. Erica says, and I can see it from this perspective. Erica says, I don't think I can handle a teacher who is so performative and cheesy. It's not the content, but that delivery would drive me absolutely nuts. Me no angry if me rich. Is that what it was? Teacher's not wrong, though, in pointing out that you can't control society with anger. Or can you? Mark replies to me on Twitter, says, Mr. Jesperson, I appreciate the reverence, Mark, says, I don't believe it's the profanity that's the issue. And Mark's right, it's not. The only reason I reference it is because the premier references the profanity. The original poster of the leaked audio talks about a profanity-laced tirade against conservatives, which is about the biggest snowflake thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But Mark says, Jespo, it's the profanity, sure, but it's talking down to an industry as a whole that I take issue with. He says, and if you can't see that, you're definitely part of the problem. Says, I'd love to hear what he has to say, but from that short clip, it's pretty evident. Travis says, Ryan, you got to try to be objective here. Try to be in the middle on this. This is not surprising about the teachers bashing conservatives. You know, another point that I think is worth making is if you're like and you can approach this like whether you're kind of a left-leaning voter or a right-leaning voter or wherever you are, some of the principles that are taught in school, some of the real important principles that we're teaching young people, things like environmental stewardship, environmental responsibility, inclusivity, pride, right? Like these types of things, if you're a traditional, and I'll hear from a gay conservative or I'll hear from a conservative that works in environmental science or whatever, but like the broad brush kind of stuff, like if you look at what conservative premiers push back on, most notably, if you look at what the federal conservatives push back on, the Republicans down in the United States that push back on, like a lot of that is around things involving environmental stewardship versus the economy, things like the carbon tax and industrial emissions caps and things like that, right? There's pushback on things like pride and pronouns and those sorts of things. And if you're looking at the role of schools, which is not just to help kids understand the history and where they've come from and the present and the now, but the future as well, if ideologically you are opposed to things like inclusivity in the form of Pride Week or Pride Month or Pride celebrations, or if you are opposed to things like green energy because you see it as a threat to your family's industry, whether you work in coal or whether you work in oil and gas or what have you, then everything is going to come across as an attack on your political perspective or an attack on your community.
I think it kind of does already because I've said this before. I feel like, and I know you don't agree with me, but I feel like default settings when you're born are liberal left leaning. Like you're taught to share. You're taught that everyone's equal. Treat everyone fairly. Like you see someone fall down as a kid, you don't think in your head, well, that's their fault. You know, pull up your bootstrap. You think, ow, that must have hurt. I'm going to go help that person get him up. Then as you get older, your settings change. Like, so I feel like maybe there's a threat to conservatives who have kids in schools because they feel like it's kind of already, but that's the way the Western world is already a liberal democracy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of the world's conservative if you look worldwide, but I mean, like on this side of the map, that's where things kind of lean. I don't really think it's a bad thing. I just, I don't see any fun drama classes or political science classes without some form of bias and opinion sneaking in and discussion happening.
Yeah, Les says what happened before the rant. Like Les wants more context. So do I. That's my call on this. Someone says, "Are you defending him, the teacher?" I mean, number one, I'll defend teachers generally speaking.
I think he's going to get fired.
I feel I don't know. I mean, the teachers union might step in. I don't know. He could get fired. He could get reassigned. I don't know.
I feel like he's going to be sacrificed.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not.
The premier chimes in and everything. I mean,
that's the thing, right?
Big.
Like when the premier picks it up and shares it.
How do you go on? How do you come to work the next day, week, month?
Well, I mean, maybe he'll. We received a note from a Real Talker, and we'll keep them anonymous because I think that's what they want on this. But the Real Talker says if you guys want to go and you can see the original clip, says there's a hashtag #FreeBigR. Free Big R may have some relation to the teacher's name, which we wouldn't share even if we had it, but says his students are posting the hashtag Free Big R in support of the teacher. Just me in our live chat, great handle, just me, says this teacher sounds like he knows how to relate to kids. Like I wish I had him when I was in school. But Les said, yeah, like did somebody ask the teacher about separation or recall or climate change or a federal minority government? Like what happened before the content? Like what happened before that specific comment? Emily says the teachers who can relate to especially high school kids make school way more fun. Cassandra says if you feel threatened by this teacher's comments, you're way too sensitive and you need to grow a pair. Nia says consider you guys that he may be drawing on life experience. If he grew up in Bonnyville, like he's probably got firsthand experience with oil and gas workers who are rough and angry.
Right?
Like who are we to judge? Like the funny thing too is like we have the luxury of calling a spade is, not all oil and gas workers, for sure. Oil and gas is an important industry. Like, I've said it all before. But, like, we all know a guy that sounds a lot like that.
Of course.
We do.
I have friends who are, 100%.
So do we. Some of them are leaving comments on my Facebook right now. Some of my best high school buddies. Hollis says, if you're offended by this, you need to do some self-reflection. Facts over feelings, right, guys? I don't really care about how the right wing feels about this. Says I'm central right, and I work in oil and gas, and I find it funny.
I do.
That from Hollis.
I do care about how right-wing people feel about this because I have to go on X every day, which was down by 30 minutes for 30 minutes this morning. Yeah. Another problem for Elon. But I feel like these same people who are complaining about this are the same people who are like when somebody gets offended by like Dave Chappelle, stepping on trans people in like 3 of his Netflix specials, they're like free speech, blah, blah, blah. But then they're concerned about this. And I get that it's in a setting where like you're molding children's minds and things like that. But I'll say this again. I think these kids, they're not 5-year-olds. This is a high school, right? These are young minds who are about to go out in the world, about to choose which college or university they're going to or trade they're going to pick. And I don't think they're as naive as people are being so scared on social media about this. Like, oh my God, he said this one thing. Now my kid is a liberal. Like the fact that somebody recorded this in class shows that they probably didn't agree with the teacher. They were trying to get him got.
Yeah. Justin hit me up on X and says the group that touts fuck Trudeau stickers publicly on their vehicles and their toolboxes is offended to hear those exact same words uttered in classrooms. Goes on to say the teacher should know better, but nothing that he said was untrue. And it's great to hear the larger context of this. It would be, but it wouldn't fit that outrage narrative. Yeah, it's so funny for me to hear the profanity-laced tirade, says the guy who originally released this.
So
the
soft.
profanity-laced tirade.
So soft.
It's 10-ply soft, as somebody said in our live chat. I think it was Meta Modern. Somebody said this guy is baby shit soft on it. But keep in mind, it doesn't belong in classrooms. Language doesn't belong in classrooms. Bro. Like with your Fuck Trudeau bumper stickers and the flags and the shirts and everything else you're wearing, like our toddlers are seeing that. Little kids learning how to read, sitting at red lights are seeing it. You haven't cared one bit about that word or that phrase, not even once. As a matter of fact, you've proclaimed it. If you read through the comments on my X, which is just a dumpster fire right now, my cousin Carson reached out to me and he said, bro, last night he says, dude, your comment section on Facebook is nuts right now. That from Carson. I haven't even gone to check it. I kind of lit that fire and walked away from it.
I think the problem here, and again, I'm not saying like we're some bastion of like journalism here at this show. We're an entertainment show, news, politics. Ryan digs as deep as he can, but I feel like the person who posted this, the outlet that posted this, like there was no like, this is from a student who is this age in this grade, this class. All we got was some audio that, hey, this is in a class. I want to know specific details. And I feel like that would have helped us out. And I'm sure we'll get that over the weekend. I'm sure they'll narrow everything down, but like I'd also like to hear more. And I'm not saying we should record classrooms, but 45 seconds is not enough.
Dark Cloud Whiskey in our chat, powered by Park Power, says, OMG, not a teacher in tune with the kids, he teaches, and knowing how to reach them. Teachers like this will be remembered by their students forever. Laura says teachers are going to teach in a way that keeps the kids interested. And Nia says, and the teacher even says that the NDP sign that his hippie mom put up was a joke, like he himself is a conservative. But his focus was about anger being used to close your mind.
That's what I'm wondering. So he is a conservative? Because this
we
is
don't know.
This
I
is
don't
at
know.
a Catholic school, right?
I don't know. Cassandra says, why is an educator speaking truth to older kids and teaching them critical thinking even considered bad? This is completely ridiculous. I love this from Emily, who's remembering her history teacher in high school. Says he was a 50-year-old shorter guy, coordinated his ties to the topic of the day.
Ooh.
Said he had a USSR flag tie. Oh, my God. Can you imagine if a teacher present day in Alberta wore a hammer and a sickle on their tie? Oh, geez. Says he would get so worked up that he hopped. And Emily says, I loved him. And she says, and I bet if there's other McNally alum in the chat, they probably love him too or remember him too. This is great from Leslie, who says, the more I hear about this, the more I think of some of my favorite teachers from high school who taught with humor and who made learning interesting and who made thinking fun. Leslie says, kudos to the teacher. Others of you are saying the media account that the premier shared is far, far right. Says, so the premier shows her own bias by using that as a source.
Yeah,
Super Chat Ken says, I'm deeply disappointed by what I hear from Danielle Smith almost every day. Leaders have a duty to remain professional and politically neutral in delivering services to the entire electorate. Super Chat Ken weaponizing the premier's words against her. Justin says, I don't agree that teachers should be completely unbiased, you guys. Says school and education is where you go to learn empathy and other skills as well. Teachers are people too. And I totally agree. And I think it's a fine line. And I think we have to trust our teachers. And some of you are going to scoff and laugh, and that's fine. To some of you, I'm not here to change your mind because you've planted your flag. You know how you feel. Teachers are the enemy. Education is the enemy. It's why some of you pulled your kids out of school or why you're sending them to certain schools or why you're a real pain in the ass of your kid's teacher. We know that. And the thing about teachers is, generally speaking, on an individual level, they don't bitch and moan about it.
No.
Right? They walk with some of the challenges in the job.
What do you want? Teachers are a different breed. They're a little quirky, like you just talking about, the guy with the tie. Like these are the people that get up every day and make not enough money, in my opinion, shape young minds, deal with all the crap. Like, when you're at home for 3-4 hours a night with your kid and you get annoyed, they're with them for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little quirky, and sometimes they're humans. But
we want them to be humans.
Yeah.
I agree. And you and I both agree. Like I got a note here from one of you who I have confirmed. I'm just going to protect the source here, guys, but I've confirmed that this person does know the teacher and knows the teacher well. And they've said, like, and I'll paraphrase the comment, but they basically say, like, you know, it means a lot to this teacher to see people backing him for the most part. But says, when you and Johnny agree on it's not a good look, he says, I agree with that too. It's not a good look. It's a tough look.
Yeah.
It's a tough look for the teacher.
And we should say that because it's a school.
I'll tell you what.
We get that it's not a comedy club or
it's not a comedy club, and it's not a political event. It's not a youth rally, a youth political rally. And this will have, I would imagine, a real chilling effect on what teachers feel like they can say in front of their classes.
I was just going to say
moving forward, like when the premier's tweeting about it.
We don't want the presidents to be like classrooms are being recorded now. You know what I mean? Because then every word you say is going to be clipped into 4 seconds, and then you're going to have AI teaching us. That's what you're going to drive it to.
Wow. I mean, it just, maybe you're right.
I prompted AI yesterday to be unbiased and give me one-word answers only because I was in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want these answers, and I want them quick, and I need them now, and I'm mad at you, AI. Yeah. And it did it. It gave me one-word answers, unbiased. I mean, that's how we can teach kids if you want.
If we want. If that's what we want. If we want to train robots. Tracy says, can you guys imagine if your worthiness at your job was measured by one random 60-second out-of-context audio clip of you today? Tracy, you could find myriad of 60-second clips.
If you got the 90s me on
of me
tape.
Just sounding like an absolute fucking idiot. Like, absolutely. And that's, again, like I said, my original position on this was we deserve more context. The teacher deserves to have more context. You know, did the student really just record 60 seconds? Or is the source here, this media influencer, just choosing to release just that 60 seconds? Like, what's the background? What else did he talk about? Who else did he take aim at? Where else did his jokes go, right? Lindsay says, Jesperson, you are truly a partisan clown. The educator's job is to present and educate and allow youth to make their own opinions. That's literally what he's fucking doing, dude. Says not dictate their own opinion, and that clearly happened here. And then Lindsay says, how dare you justify it? Tom wonders, if it was a conservative teacher speaking about a left-wing topic, would you have such grace and understanding and patience to get to the bottom of this? I replied, that was my entire upbringing, because it was. Barb says, Ryan, why is it that no matter what leftists do, regardless of how inappropriate, you rush to their defense? Brock says, Jesper, I respect you, but school's not a podcast. And unless this was a discussion where the teacher brought up multiple viewpoints, it sounds highly likely it goes against their professional conduct. And then he says, imagine the shoe on the other foot before you berate the premier. I didn't berate the premier, obviously. But Brock's right. Classrooms are not podcasts. Bob says, I'm an unhinged lefty. Always shifting the goalposts to attack my political opponents. Gail says it doesn't really sound like a classroom to me. Big City Jim says the teacher should be fired for trashing the energy sector that pays his salary. Imagine that. Imagine the precedent that would be set if a teacher were to be fired for questioning Alberta's oil and gas industry because it pays his salary. Starvin Marvin says, I'd be interested to hear what the students who had to sit and listen to that have to say. Why don't you have them on the show, Ryan? I would, Starvin Marvin. If you know them, put them in touch. We'll do a whole roundtable. We'll bring in the whole class. We'll take our show on the road. OG Gen X. Guys, these are all Twitter comments I'm reading, by the way. They're different than the live chat for sure. Says these are kids in school, guys. The teacher has a job, and it's not to rave to the students about his hatred of anything. Guys, there's no hate in the comment. Like, are we serious? Are we this soft? Says it's clearly over the line. Sean says some 30 years ago when I was in high school, it wasn't evident whom our teachers supported politically. That is certainly not the case anymore. And only rabid partisans think that it's a good thing. Meantime, Boogie Rambler wonders, are we afraid of real discussions in schools now? Jan says, I want all the details before making a decision. Enough with the teacher bashing. Here it is. Oceanic Prole says, keep recording classes. If it's a public school, it's public. Stakeholders should know what and who they're paying for. There's a lot of people that think that they're smarter than teachers. They'd be better than teachers at teaching, right? We heard from a lot of them during that teachers' strike. Rogue Money says this is unacceptable in a classroom. Charlie says, weird how quick the premier was to comment on this, but radio silence when a man died in the ER back in December, or a woman waited in an ER for 3 days, or Albertans are begging for help in healthcare emergencies with no beds and no doctors. Comrade Yanch says, I think the premier retweeting an alt-right conservative influencer might be kind of a problem. Russ says, Premier Smith set the bar low with what she expected from Bruce McAllister for his inappropriate comments. A half-assed apology and a promise to do better. That's enough, right, Danielle? That from Russ. Bruce McAllister is, what's his job now? Something like executive director of the Premier's office or something like that. Remember that? He was the one that told the high school kid that he should be spanked by his parents.
Executive chef at Sky Palace.
Bruce is kind of, in a way, a former colleague of mine, in a way. We were both morning TV hosts back in the day in Alberta. I got no beef with Bruce McAllister personally. It was a tough look for him. That was a tough look for him. We talk about tough looks across the board. This is a tough look for this teacher. That was a tough look for Bruce this summer on the Alberta Next panels. You can let us know what you think about this, guys. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. Goramut says that is absolute nonsense. By the way, I went to school decades ago, and many teachers were very clear about their politics. Goramut, I'm the same way, man. Like, yeah, I mean, and mine was more, well, I don't know about yours, but I will just say mine was like spelled out, right? The school I went to was very conservative, and it was like spelled out. Like, I remember there was this member of our church congregation who was like an upstanding citizen, a wonderful guy. His kids, the kids that he raised are now like incredible, have their own family, like like just a great family. And this guy would run every single election, or at least several elections, for the federal Liberals. And I remember even as a kid, this wasn't coming from my parents, not at all. In fact, my parents loved this guy. But I remember just thinking, until my adult years, that there was always something just a little bit off about him. There must be something a little bit off about him to run for the federal Liberals, you know? That was my conditioning coming up.
I mean, there's got to be
like this
something.
guy is like a great guy, but like there's got to be something fucked up if he's running for the federal Liberals, right? There's got to be something. There's got to be something wrong with this guy. That was my conditioning. And Super Chat Ken, by the way, adds, and the whole industry pays the teacher's salary is absolute horseshit. The oil and gas industry pays royalties and taxes for the privilege of selling Alberta's resources to make a generous profit, and nobody owes anybody. I love that from Super Chat Ken. Let us know what you think about this. I suspect that maybe we'll have some contributions to the flamethrower for next week on this one. It's quite possible, and that's coming up here in just a quick second. Before we get there, I want to make sure that UCAN Youth Services is on your radar. In particular, if it comes to your social plans, mid-March, the UCAN Comedy Nights are back, and we're proud to support them. Go to ucan.ca. This is a super fun opportunity to support a very important nonprofit charitable organization that's helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They're creating employment opportunities, and you can help fund those programs by having a few laughs. From March 9th to 11th, March 16th to 18th, again, UCAN Comedy Nights are back. You can get your tickets today at ucan.ca. We're going to be there one of the nights. We're going to be auctioning off a Real Talk lunch and studio tour experience, which is kind of cool. Just our way of supporting an agency, an organization that we're big fans of. Again, that's UCAN Youth Services at ucan.ca. Hey, have you checked out CaliforniaClosets.ca recently? If you think that these guys are all about closets, I want you to think again for a second. Yes, they do the best closets in the business. There's no doubt about that. My wife is just in love with her walk-in closet by California Closets. But what they're doing with garages will blow your mind. The garage is the workhorse of the home, but a lot of times we kind of neglect it, don't we? It's not like a lot of us are hanging out in our garage. I mean, I am all the time, but it's because my garage is a bar, John. And California Closets can transform yours to be both efficient, effective, and aesthetically pleasing. And the installation is going to be guaranteed for the life of your home. Check out their garage storage systems online. Look at that. That's absolutely incredible. Premium garage organization, including storage cabinets. You can request a free consultation. Check out what their team can do for you by visiting californiaclosets.ca. Hey, how cool was that companion bird rescue story yesterday? Not just a parrot rescue, but a companion. It's called Mika's Safe House, and that was shared by a Real Talker as an Alberta win. Every Thursday on the show, we feature Alberta wins presented by Play Alberta, something that makes us really, really proud of our home province. Now, if you submit an Alberta win, you're going to qualify to win 2 tickets to the Play Alberta Suite. Yeah, the box. At the Oilers game on March 21st, it's Real Talk night in that box, presented by Play Alberta. So we want to hear your Alberta win story. What was it that inspired you, an individual, an organization, a school team, whatever it was, to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Make sure you put Alberta wins in the subject line. You know, there are literally hundreds of popular casino games to choose from on the Play Alberta app or at playalberta.ca. There's a major casino winner every single hour, and all revenue stays right here in the province. That's not the case with the other guys. So if you like what you're hearing, make sure you download the Play Alberta app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. You got to be 18 or over to play, and when you gamble, please do use your game sense. For those of you that are making a decision right now on what your family's philanthropy, what your charitable giving is going to look like over the next year, we're inviting you to consider the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation, an incredible organization. Of course, the Royal Alex, one of Canada's busiest and most important hospitals, serving an incredible population, a third of the size of Canada, geographically speaking, every single year. It's really, truly mind-blowing stuff. You can consider a gift to the Alex at royalalex.org today. 125 years they're celebrating. And we're inviting you to give generously and be part of the Royal Alex's legacy of care with either a one-time gift in honor of a loved one or a monthly gift in support of the next 125 years at the Royal Alex. Again, that's give to royalalex.org. And for those of you that are Patreon supporters or YouTube channel members, want to let you know our contest is live for you to win 2 tickets to the Citadel Theatre's production of Death of a Salesman. That's coming up January 24th, pretty soon. It runs all the way through till February 15th, but it's going to be over before you know it, and that's why we want to make sure that you get your tickets today. Follow the instructions, our Real Talk patrons, our YouTube channel members, that you received within the last 24 hours to qualify to win 2 tickets to the production. And if you don't want to risk it, if you want to get your tickets today to Arthur Miller's poignant story of a traveling salesman grappling with unfulfilled dreams and strained family bonds, check out citadeltheater.com. This is a timeless drama that explores ambition, identity, and the pursuit of success, revealing the fragility of the human spirit, the yearning for validation. Death of a Salesman has shaped generations. If you've missed it or if you love it and you want to see it again, check out citadeltheater.com today to get your tickets. As we wrap every week here on the show, we give you a chance to take over, to hold the conch, to bring us your hottest takes. For Real Talkers that are all fired up, this has become your favorite tradition, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This is the Flamethrower. Real emails to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Again, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And this one from Aaron, who writes in, on the heels of Canada reaching an agreement with China on canola, peas, EVs, and a few other things, do people not understand, writes Aaron, how much of the oil sands are owned by Chinese entities? These same people who are arguing against the benefits of investing in China every single day, like somehow Chinese EVs are a step too far. She says it is so frustrating. What about this one from AJ, who says somebody needs to tell, earmuffs kids, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, to shut the fuck up. Canada does not have any consumer EV manufacturing in Canada. The only significant production related to EVs will be Honda, VW, and Stellantis battery production if they ever finish the plants. Let China export EVs to Canada. Then we can retool some of our manufacturing to support the Chinese product. We don't have to continue to prop up American companies. They sure as hell aren't doing anything to help us. If the old world order has truly changed, as Mark Carney stated when he was elected, then it's time to start plotting our own course without the United States. That from AJ. I mean, we still want the United States as part of our plan, AJ, but I'll take your point. This one from Laura, who says, Jespo, I heard your episode about the petition to end public funding of independent and private schools. I'm not a parent or a teacher, but I do have an opinion as a concerned Albertan. She says, what I haven't heard from you or anybody else is the special interest groups that support the funding level of 70%. That's where Alberta funds private and independent schools. Now, although many parents may support parental or school choice in principle, what they may not realize is that most private or independent schools are choosing to hire non-unionized teachers. That is a move, in my opinion, to entrench that funding model or encourage more independent and private schools will effectively undermine teachers as a profession and the bargaining power of the Alberta Teachers Association. If nothing else, all schools accredited in Alberta should be required to hire unionized workers. Laura says, by the way, thank you for your coverage. I appreciate Real Talk, and I've been following from my vacation abroad. Laura, atta girl, thank you. Lisa says, something to consider, Real Talkers. Private schools provide choice for those with normal, whatever that means, kids who can afford it, but it's not an option for everybody. By all indicators, says Lisa, my son is a normal learner, but one of his organs doesn't work. So if I want normal for my kid who's already been through so much at his young age, he requires constant monitoring and will receive support in public school as he learns to manage on his own. We looked into private daycares so he could get extra attention with a smaller ratio, but we've been refused at every step. He's too much work. He's too much of a liability, and they don't have to take him. Private schools, we suspect, will be the same. Many families like ours, says Lisa, are forced into homeschooling, which is a choice, but it ain't my choice. That from Lisa. This from Natasha, who says, the comments, guys, regarding funding for private and public schools, your interview with Alicia Taylor on January 15th have proven why public education needs adequate and improved funding. The blatant or willful ignorance in the comments that the tax dollar should follow the child, or that the private system saves the public system money, or this and that is all about the ATA. It's the teachers are selfish. Natasha says it's mind-boggling. First, I'd love an economist to look into the claim that this is going to save the public purse, because just like Johnny, I'm not buying it. It's exploiting the public purse, and anybody that uses that excuse failed to learn anything about taxes and the collective good in grade 9. My tax dollars build and repair roads that everybody has access to, not somebody's private driveway, and the same should go for public services. And as for the special needs schools, if we had a government that actually gave a shit about its citizens, the special needs schools would be funded publicly, and those parents wouldn't have to pay. So let's put this to a referendum on public dollars for private schools and let Albertans decide, Natasha says. Get out and sign that petition. This one from Gerald, who says, my big issue with the debate on funding for private schools, very similar to my concern with privatization and healthcare. No one is really against choice, but the problem lies in the fact that there's politicians who have donor supports and other people who financially benefit from the for-profit models, and their behavior will often lead you to believe that they may be purposely breaking or stretching or damaging public models to drive people to private. So it's not really that, private schools, charter schools, these schools are bad, people should have the choice, whatever. He says, I don't have a problem with a wealthy person being able to pay extra, including to get surgery more quickly, but I do have a problem with it if it takes doctors out of hospitals and ORs out of the public system. That from Gerald. See everything? Education, healthcare, so many parallels, Gerald, right? This one from Bev, who says, interesting discussions on Real Talk this week. She says, number one, as a matter of fact, Bev, I'm sorry. You told me not to use your name. It was later in the email. That fuck-up's on me. I'll find a way to sneak it in later next week. Travis writes in and says, hey, guys, on snow clearing, you knew that there was going to be a flamethrower on snow clearing, Johnny. Says, almost every Edmontonian is telling our new mayor, Andrew Knack, that the city's snow clearing efforts aren't good enough. Everybody's saying that it needs to be better. Like cars, buses, fire trucks, ambulances are getting stuck daily. Travis, truck for like 4 hours. Anyway, back to your email. He says people with limited mobility are literally stuck at home waiting for these graders to get to their houses. But rather than simply saying, we hear you loud and clear, it's not good enough, we're going to fix this like a good leader should, our mayor is saying, we hear you, but people need to follow the parking bans. There's more snow than normal. We can't afford to clear it all. If we want better snow clearing, you'll need to pay more taxes. Yeah, we get it, Mayor, says Travis. Some years it snows more than others. So what, for crying out loud? Or as my buddy Keith Jones used to say in university, fuck crying out loud. None of this is new. Stop making excuses and fix the problem. That from Travis. What about this one from Joseph, who says, guys, I am terrified. The Americans appear to me to be on the brink of civil war, or is at least as close as it's been in my lifetime. Now, you may say, oh, Joseph, you're being dramatic. That can't happen. You're crazy. He says, here's how I see it playing out. ICE murders somebody else in cold blood. The state governor calls up the National Guard, talking about Tim Walz, to kick ICE out of the state by force. The Trump regime goes to the Supreme Court to get an injunction or tries to order the National Guard to stop by declaring a national emergency. The state says they no longer recognize the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, and the National Guard refuses to be nationalized. Meantime, the Guard is out in the streets in a state of active war against ICE agents. Trump rolls tanks out in Minnesota, and other states call up their own guards to defend themselves against American armed forces and the American government, or to support the American government against the first state. Joe says, now this feels like something I saw out of a movie, Civil War, when it first came out, and the prospect seemed so far-fetched, and now stuff like that movie is happening, like a third term for Donald Trump. That from Joseph. And the SCO will bring us home on this. He just writes in to say, holy smokes, the show's on fire. What the heck was your New Year's resolution, Jespo? I'll tell you what, the SCO, it was to stay curious and keep it real. And that's what we'll keep doing with your support and the support of our sponsors. Thanks for your engagement, Real Talkers. We love you guys. You can fire up your flamethrower anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And don't forget, when you visit the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road to pick up your flamethrower signature stack burger and your Score Blizzard, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. We're back at it Monday morning. First episode of the week with Supriya Dwivedi and our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. We hope to see you then. Thanks for liking and sharing the episode, and thanks for keeping it real.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General Manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account Coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human Resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton.